Zombie ant fungus. A fungus that turns ants into puppets, and it does it without ever touching the brain. Ophiocordyceps unilateralis drifts down as a spore, latches onto a foraging ant, and burrows in. Then it does something genuinely disturbing. It grows through the ant's body and wraps around its muscle fibers directly, hijacking the limbs while leaving the brain fully conscious. The ant is essentially trapped inside its own skull, screaming while its legs march to someone else's orders. The fungus walks it away from the colony, drives it to a precise height on a plant, almost always around 25 centimeters up, where temperature and humidity are perfect, and then triggers the death grip. The ant clamps its jaws onto a leaf vein and locks there forever. Then it dies. A stalk erupts from the back of its head like a tiny horn and rains spores onto the ants walking below. It's so efficient that colonies have learned to carry infected members far away the moment they spot the symptoms. Nature invented quarantine because of this thing. Emerald cockroach wasp. This wasp performs brain surgery, and it's better at it than most surgeons. The emerald cockroach wasp is a gorgeous metallic green insect with a horrifying parenting strategy. It hunts cockroaches more than twice its size, and instead of overpowering them, it stings with surgical precision. The first sting hits the chest to briefly stun the front legs. The second is the masterpiece. It threads its stinger directly into the cockroach's brain, feeling around for a specific cluster of neurons that control the escape reflex. It doesn't paralyze the roach, it just deletes its will to run. The cockroach can still walk, groom, even right itself if flipped. It simply no longer wants to flee. So the wasp grabs an antenna and leads it, calmly, like walking a dog on a leash, into a dark burrow. There it lays an egg on the roach's belly, seals the door, and leaves. The larva hatches, chews inside, and eats the still-living, perfectly docile cockroach from the inside out. The roach never even tries to leave. Green-banded broodsac. This is a parasite that turns a snail into a flashing neon advertisement for its own death. Leucochloridium paradoxum starts as eggs in bird droppings, which a snail eats. Inside, it grows into long, swollen sacs that push up into the snail's eye stalks, and then it puts on a show. The tentacles swell, pulse, and throb with bands of vivid green and yellow, looking exactly like fat, wriggling caterpillars. A snail's eye stalk has become bait. But the parasite isn't done. Normally, snails avoid light and hide in shadow. So it rewires the snail's behavior, dragging it out into open, sunlit, exposed places. Up high, in the open, the worst possible spot for a soft, squishy snail. A passing bird sees what looks like two squirming caterpillars, pecks them off, and swallows. The parasite reproduces in the bird, ships out in its droppings, and the whole cycle starts again. The snail often just regrows the tentacles so it can be harvested a second time. A living caterpillar dispenser. Hairworm. Imagine a worm 3 times longer than you, living inside your body, that decides one day you should drown yourself. The hairworm starts microscopic, swallowed by a cricket in its drinking water. Inside, it grows into a thin, coiling thread that can reach a foot long, coiled up inside an insect the size of a thumbnail. When it's mature and ready to breed, it faces one problem. It needs water, and it's stuck inside a land animal. So it solves the problem chemically. It floods the cricket's nervous system with proteins that mimic and scramble the insect's own brain signals, specifically hijacking the systems that tell the cricket where it is. The confused, compelled cricket does something it would never normally do. It seeks out water and leaps in. As it drowns, the worm bursts out of its rear end and swims away to find a mate, leaving the corpse behind. It made its host build its own coffin and jump in. Toxoplasma. There's a decent chance this one is in your brain right now, and it specializes in making mice suicidal. Toxoplasma gondii is a single-celled parasite with one obsession. It can only sexually reproduce inside the gut of a cat. The trouble is, it usually finds itself inside a rodent, so it engineers a meeting. The parasite migrates to the rodent's brain and rewires the fear circuitry with surgical specificity. A healthy mouse smells cat urine and panics. An infected mouse smells cat urine and feels something closer to attraction. It strolls toward the predator, relaxed and curious. The mouse gets eaten, the parasite reaches the cat, and the cycle completes. The unsettling part is that Toxoplasma infects humans too, carried by undercooked meat and litter boxes, and studies have linked it to subtle shifts in risk-taking and reaction time. Roughly a third of all people on Earth carry it. Sleep well. Crypt keeper wasp. This is a parasite that parasitizes another parasite and then bursts out through its skull. Uteruset, named after the Egyptian god of chaos, preys on the crypt gall wasp, which already lives inside little chambers in oak trees called crypts. The gall wasp's whole life plan is to chew a tidy exit hole and fly away. But when the crypt keeper infects it, everything changes. The host starts chewing an escape tunnel as usual, except this time it stops early, leaving the hole far too small to fit through, and then jams its own head into the gap and gets stuck, plugging the exit like a cork. Nobody fully knows why it does this. It's somehow manipulated into making its own head a door. The crypt keeper, meanwhile, has been eating the host alive from within. When it's ready, it doesn't bother making its own exit. It simply tunnels forward and chews straight out through the trapped host's face. The head was the door. The parasite uses it. Zombie bodyguard wasp. This wasp doesn't just kill a caterpillar, it conscripts the corpse-to-be as an armed guard. Glyptopantalus lays its eggs inside a living caterpillar, and the larvae grow up feeding on its blood and fat. When they're ready, dozens of them chew their way out through the caterpillar's skin and spin cocoons right next to it. You'd expect the gutted caterpillar to die, or at least wander off. Instead, it stands guard over the very creatures that just ate their way out of its body. A few larvae appear to stay behind inside, hijacking its behavior. The caterpillar stops eating. It arches over the cocoons like a bodyguard, and if a hungry beetle or bug comes near, it violently thrashes and headbangs to knock the threat away. It defends its murderers faithfully, eating nothing until the new wasps emerge, and only then does it finally starve to death. Stockholm Syndrome, weaponized. Rabies virus. This is the closest thing nature has to the zombie virus from the movies, and it's terrifyingly good at spreading. Rabies doesn't bother going for the bloodstream first. It enters through a bite, then slowly crawls up the nerves toward the brain, staying hidden from the immune system the entire trip. Once it reaches the brain, it takes the wheel. It floods the host with aggression and the urge to bite, because biting is exactly how the virus, loaded into saliva, jumps to a new body. To pile on more saliva, it paralyzes the throat muscles so the animal can't swallow, leaving it drooling and foaming. And in its cruelest trick, it makes the host terrified of water. The sight or sound of liquid triggers violent throat spasms, which keeps the virus-rich saliva from ever being washed away or diluted. A virus that manufactures rage, fills the mouth with itself, and stops its host from rinsing it out. Untreated, it is almost 100% fatal. Sacculina. This barnacle invades a crab and turns it into a devoted parent for a baby that isn't its own. Forget the hard shell glued to a rock. Sacculina is a barnacle that gave all that up to become a parasite. The female finds a crab, finds a weak spot in its armor, and injects a tiny blob of her own cells inside. From there, she spreads through the crab's body like creeping roots, threading tendrils into its muscles, its eyes, its nervous system. Then, she sterilizes it. The crab will never reproduce again. Instead, a bulging sac of parasite eggs pushes out where the crab's own eggs would normally go. And here's the genius part. The crab treats that sac exactly like its own brood. It grooms it, fans it with fresh water, and protects it fiercely. If the crab is male, the parasite chemically feminizes its